The following is a journeywise network production.
I'm Shane.
I'm Ronnie.
Ronnie and I have been friends for 40 years on this journey, and so we want you to be a part of it. So grab your mason jar and come join us as we grow Journeywise together. Welcome to Journeywise. I'm Shane Stanford.
And I'm Ronnie Kent.
And we are so glad you've joined us. We have so enjoyed being able to share about who we are and helping you get to know who we are and our journeys. But Ronnie, we may want to just pause a little bit and talk about the name of our podcast. It's called Journeywise, and there's a specific reason for that. I used to hear that phrase all the time when I was a little boy. My grandmother would say she'd rather be journeywise, and I would not have a clue as to what she was talking about, but I loved her and respected her. I knew it had to be something really important. But her story was that my grandfather was murdered when she was pregnant with her fourth child, my uncle, Joe. And my grandfather was not a nice man. He was a hemophiliac like me, but and I'm sure he was in a lot of pain. This was back in a day when, so he was never probably in a good state of mind, and ended up doing things, I think, to self-medicate, and got himself into a situation where I think my understanding is that the brothers of a young woman that he was messing around with, this is all family history, so I'm not sharing news.
Yes, I understand.
They started setting fires out in the woods, and he was the park guy. And he said he knew who it was, and he went out and they found him he was shot in his truck. And so my grandmother finds herself with a 2-year associate degree and 3 children, one on the way. So she decides to ride in the back of a laundry truck 30, 40 minutes, I guess maybe longer at that time.
Yes.
To Southern Miss to go to school. And she became a teacher, taught for 40 years after that as a second grade teacher. One of the best memories for me growing up is that I went to first grade in the school where she taught. And so I would walk from my first grade classroom at the end of school every day, and I would walk over to her class, and she would have saved, do you remember they used to give milk out?
Oh, in the carton.
In the little carton? She would save 2 chocolate milks for me.
That's special.
And I would drink them as we drove in her Pinto on the way back to the farm.
I owned a Pinto.
Did you? Well, that's a whole other program right there. But the thing that I loved, Ronnie, was she was such a godly woman. I can remember I got to go to Disney World and spend a day with just my grandmother in Epcot when it was brand new.
Yeah.
And I was 16 years old. I didn't want to go with my parents and my at the time 5-year-old sister, and so I spent it with my grandmother. And that is still one of the sweetest memories I have. I love that woman. But she would say, I would rather be journeywise, and so she had a rough journey. And yet she said, I want to make sure that even the bad things I've endured teach me something. Mm-hmm. And really what we're talking about is 40 years of you in medicine and 30 years of me in the pastorate. I hope that people learn something from the journey.
Sure.
Why do you think, when I said journeywise or say journeywise, what do you think of?
Well, I mean, exactly what you're talking about. I mean, because we get so caught up in events that we don't look at the process. We don't look at the journey. And it's really, as a kid, what do you look forward to? Summer and Christmas, out of school, our weekends. And that's just the way you're kind of wired. And then you start to realize as you grow that you're continuing to do that. When I graduate from high school, when I graduate from college, then when I get married, then when I have
it'll all have to be better. It'll be perfect.
At some point, I'm going to, and you forget the beauty of the journey and what you acquire by paying attention to every little step along the journey and what God has for each step.
I've been blessed because I had a mom and you and a couple of other folks throughout the journey of my life who would remind me not to take certain things for granted. I also had a health issue that helped me not take things for granted. But what is one thing that if someone would have told you, you wish someone would have told you sooner that you learned along the journey?
Don't worry about the future.
Oh, wow.
No,
There's a lot of people listening that are doing just that because that's natural, I think, in a lot of our brokenness.
well, it is everything. The brokenness is the key. Because everything God intends for good, Satan intends for bad. And so, the more we're able to trust God, the more the future goes away. And because we're in the moment, and He wants us to be so much in the moment that we are not distracted from our calling, from our ministry to the world. Because if I'm worried about tomorrow, the rest of the world around me, it's not that it's not significant, it almost gets in the way.
Wow, that's good.
And so as if somebody, and I told my children this, I said, please don't worry about the what ifs of life. Don't worry about, God has a plan, and He, I tell, what animal does He compare us to in the Bible? Sheep. Are sheep right? No. And if he understands that in a loving way, the 23rd Psalm is probably one of the most significant passages in the Bible that most people know. And I have everything I need. The Lord's my shepherd. I don't need anything.
I don't want for anything.
Want for anything.
Yeah.
Because He's going to guide me in the places He wants me to be. And sometimes, I also tell them, I said, from my understanding, not being a shepherd, the shepherd's staff had two ends. There was a front end, a straight end that he used to walk with and to protect the sheep. But then there was a somewhat of a hook end that if they kept wandering away, He would hook them, drag them back. Well, I think God uses the hook end on me a lot more than the gentle direction.
I did not know until I was actually talking to a person whose grandfather was an actual shepherd in the Middle East that they can train a sheep to actually work together to stay together, and they can't do much else. They're not particularly smart, but they do kind of congregate together. Yes. And so the parable of in Luke 15, in terms of leaving the 99 to go look for the one, if he's done his job with the other 99, they'll stay pretty much together. Right. I think we are living in a world right now. When I think back of the situations that I have faced in my life, it's the more I was connected to God and to God's people, the better I was, just clearly. Yeah. When I would, and you and I have talked a little bit about this, I got to a period about 12, 13 years ago where I was just dealing with so much things I couldn't make work out. And part of it was physical, part of it was relational, that I just sort of backed off everybody, and including you. And it was tough, and so many times during those years, I would want to call and just tell you something that had happened that day, but then shame grows. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of the adversary's tools for the journey, is that the more he can, the more, because I told someone when I called you for really the first time after all those years, it was like we picked right back up where we left off. Yeah. And that is the grace of God. But the adversary convinces you, well, it won't be the same, it'll be different. And shame really is, I think, one of the most, if not the most devastating tool he uses.
Because shame, here again, by my definition, the difference between shame and conviction, which I think is a good thing, by the Holy Spirit. Conviction says, you're a child of God, you're a good person, you've done something that's not good. So now let's ask for forgiveness. Let's get over it and get back to where I know you can be.
Sure.
Whereas shame, Satan's tool, is to condemn you that I'm not a good person. I don't have any hope of doing any better than I'm doing, so why should I try? And nobody's going to like me in this condition. And so I should just go off and be by myself. Nobody wants to be around me. It is such a lie of Satan. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Right when Jesus says, I came to give you the abundant life, right before that he says the adversary, he comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
Yeah.
And so that's what he's after, and I think I agree with you wholeheartedly. The primary tool is shame.
And I think the adversary actually dresses pride up as subtle shame a lot of times, because you'll say something maybe you've done that you have shame that you can't find forgiveness. But I've also seen people not forgive others and start again because they think it's pride or principle, but actually it is that internal shame of knowing that how much Christ has forgiven you, how much he's loved me, and then all of a sudden I can't do that. And I know I'm supposed to do that. I've seen so many people in my ministry, Ronnie, when you break it down, they're just at a place where they feel like it's too late to forgive. It's too late to start over. And it's never too late to start over, to begin again.
No. I mean, it gets somewhat back to that herding effect of how we're made. We need relationships. You know, it's all about the relationship. So we need relationships. So we may not forgive. We may move ourselves into a group like that. I mean, nothing against green or blue hair. I think there's some people who it looks, and I'm serious, it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
But you know, that is an identifier of a group.
But you and I are old. We're old people.
And I have never tried blue hair.
Well, you just don't have much hair in your left.
And I appreciate that too. Yeah. So maybe that's why I took it and put it on my ears. But
however, if you ever decide to try blue, green, or purple hair, I will be the first one there with you, supporting you.
Great. So, but that inability to forgive, that need to stay away from one group pushes you to another group. And that's why bad groups, I do believe that's why gangs happen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's because of shame, and you want to be identified with your herd,
We had a young man that we brought out of a gang situation in Memphis a few years ago, and he actually worked in our recreation, and he gave the best testimony when they would say, "Why did you get into that? And why did you do?" I mean, he talked about some of the things he did in order to be initiated. Right. He said, I wanted to belong. Mm-hmm. And he said, I think about the times in my life where the most important things I probably did was just being present for people, for my children, Absolutely. For my wife, for others in the church, and how important that was. And I think if there's something that I tell people that I wish somebody would have told me earlier, is I wish somebody would have said how important the moment is with people that God angles into your path, how important that moment is. Because I think back now about the times that I said, my greatest enemy was always time. Right. And I was always running so quick that I never really appreciated, I think, or enjoyed some of the moments. I remember the first time my daughter, Juliana, she was in high school. She was a sophomore in high school. I'll never forget it. And she went to Chrysalis, which is the walk to Emmaus for youth. And she told her testimony about how she had specifically disconnected from me when she was a child because she was afraid I was going to die. Mm. I took that as she didn't like me. Right. And therefore my response a lot of times was just to stay out of her way, give her space. When actually I should have been chasing after her the way God chases after us, the way God has pursued us, chasing.
Standing at the door.
Standing at the door, or looking over to the horizon for the sun to come home. The prodigal son. Beautiful. And I think about how important it is. Well, I mean, Luke 15, looking at the horizon, going after the sheep, finding that lost coin. I mean, God is always pursuing us. And then when she gave that testimony, it was amazing how almost overnight Juliana and I built this very special relationship in her, and still have it to this day, that we'll talk about things that she doesn't talk with anybody else. One of my regrets is that I didn't understand that earlier. But but I understand God. Someone said that I don't believe that God is manipulating time, but I think God is making all time matter according to his purpose.
Yes.
What would you say to that?
Well, and here again, I've got this fairly weird, I think the time you told me to pray for something, remember that?
Oh, yes, that God can answer on Monday, something you don't pray till Tuesday.
Right.
I love that, because God's not sitting around counting how many times.
Not a clock in heaven.
The sun is, yeah.
I just don't believe there's a clock in heaven. Right. And he's not up there saying, I wish they'd hurry up and get there. like some people may
So
be
let's
saying.
be clear about what was just said, because someone just went, "What?" God can answer on a Monday something we don't pray until Tuesday,
Yeah,
because God is not.
limited.
The way I explain that to my children, because I used to say, Uncle Ronnie said this, and they would say, "What?" I'd say, "Well, think about it. You know, it's morning right now in Europe,
Right.
when it would be night." And I would say, just think about that. You know, that time means something because of where the earth is to the sun. You know, God doesn't deal in that.
He's outside.
He's outside of all that.
And so it's kind of like him foreknowing something. He just knows it.
Just knows it.
It's no forward.
That's right.
But you know, and so I think because of that, we do hurry through life, and we think, oh, what a mistake parents of teenagers make on that journey. The journey wise for parents of teenagers, I'll tell you right now, is to listen more than you talk.
Oh, wow, that's good.
Well, and you know,
It's good for everybody, but especially those
especially
days.
for teenagers, because the parents feel like I've got to get it. I've only got a few minutes with them, so I've got to just get all this wisdom or all these instructions or all these limits and what this is what you need to do. Well, I mean, it's the old Charlie Brown. Wah, wah, wah. If you're not willing to listen to me, I'm not going to be too willing to listen to you.
You used to, in your parenting workshops, you used to say that by what age really have you pretty much formulated the moral center of your children?
6 to 9.
Yeah.
6 to 9, they have started to pick up from you what is right or wrong and why. I mean, there's so many subtle things, you know, riding in the car and they glance over at 10 and look at the speedometer. You know, this says 65, Dad, you're going 70.
Yeah.
You know, we
I've
think,
had that
oh,
conversation.
well, you know, oh, that's just not important. Well, for them, it is starting to establish how close can I get to the law, you know.
Well, I fell into a worse trap one day with that. Sarah Grace looked over and I think I had picked her up from school and we were trying to get to dance or whatever it was. And she said, "Dad, you know, you're going over the speed limit." And my response was, "Well, if you weren't involved in so many things, I wouldn't have to rush. So I'm going to blame you. I'm going to blame you." I mean, I think back on how bad a parent I was in acute moments. I think
kids turned
and
out.
our kids they have a great mother. And so it really was a miracle.
A great God.
And a great God, absolutely. But I was going to say, when we dropped my youngest daughter off at college in San Diego, and her mom and I are crying all the way back to the airport, the last thing she did is she came around and prayed for us. And in her prayer, she thanked God that she had had such a great foundation laid. Now, on the way back to the airport, I looked over at Pokey and I said, "Can you name 10 things that we really did to lay that foundation?" And the point is that it's about the relationship. It's about being present. And you know what? They're going to have to make their own decisions. But what you really do affect is you affect the principles of the journey.
You tell them where to, you know, a journey certainly implies a distance.
Yes.
And going on uncharted. I mean, we're spoiled now because we put in a thing and turn in 400 feet, turn right. But you know, at one time we had to look at maps. I still remember the book, the atlas. The little book
yes.
Stuff.
Yeah.
You take it out and stuff, and so.
And for those listening who are young, that's a book that actually had places and directions on it. Yes.
Maps of each state.
Very, very important.
That would change and you would get lost.
That's right.
But I always wanted my children, if something would happen, even though I don't think it was as time conscious as you, if something would happen, I said, I never want you to wonder what I would say in a particular situation that you needed direction on your journey. That was always the Bible. You go, and then I had several men picked out that if you need financial help, go to them. If you need spiritual help, go to them. If you need medical help, go to them and talk to them, because we don't think about the journey and the directions we need as we go. But what you and Pokey did, for new people, that's your wife.
Yes, that's right.
What?
Ooh, Gumby. Sorry. I'll be in trouble after this one for that. No, I'm just saying most people think of Pokey with Gumby. It was not anything. Okay, please continue.
I think we should continue.
Okay, yes. Please continue.
But you know, as we go along, we think that it's the big events of life that our children are watching for that foundation. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not, if you ask yours, and I know I've asked mine, tell me some stuff you remember about childhood. It's not the big events that, now, they thought those were cool.
Sure.
But mine was tickle in the playroom.
Yes.
You know, I'd come home from work just wiped out, and all I could do was lay down on the floor in the playroom. But they would jump on me,
Oh,
and
yes.
I would tickle them and things like that. And, you know, it's that kind of relational thing on the journey that causes them to have the map.
Mine talk about sack of taters. That's what we called it. And that's when they would come in, I would throw them over my shoulder. And no wonder I have bad shoulders as an old hemophiliac. But I would throw them over my shoulders and I would walk around and I'd say, hey, has anyone seen Emily? And she's flying around on the back. Let me ask you this question. This was asked to me actually by someone at a conference one time, sprinter or cross country? Which would you rather be?
Cross country.
Me too.
Cross country for a couple of reasons. Number one is that I'm a little more laid back. And number one, country, you get to enjoy.
Yeah.
And plus, now I've never run cross country. I've run some stuff, and you can talk to the people. That's why I didn't play golf for my golf ability. Okay, I mean, there's no reason for you to comment on this. There's no reason. But the beauty of golf is the journey.
This is one of the great truths, friends, that he's sharing right now.
Confession is good for the soul.
Huh?
The story about buying the bicycle.
Oh, yeah. You need to tell that story. You need to take this one out, Bryant, this little interchange. Go on and finish, and then tell them about you didn't play golf for your golf game.
Okay. So I didn't play
And I
golf with you.
hallelujah'd you.
Yeah, I didn't play golf with you because I was a great golfer and I thought you enjoyed. I know you tolerated, but the reason we played was for the journey.
Oh,
was for
absolutely.
the relationship.
And we had a
building.
lot of fun.
You had a lot of fun playing. I still remember the one time I saw you chili dip one, and I made I took great comfort in that and used it a lot. So, you know, I think that's what we've got to do, and we've talked about the whole time in this time, is slow down. Don't wait for the big moments along the journey for God to do something big. I mean, that's as you look at the life of Jesus and his journey that we can help people with and life along the way.
Absolutely.
You know, if you watch him, some of his most significant things that he told the disciples. Now, yes, the Sermon on the Mount. He went up on a mountainside. His disciples came to him. He sat down and began to teach them.
And Jesus is the only human being that I know of that could do sprint and cross country very well to perfection.
Some of us try to sprint that are cross country people, and we fall down. You know.
And you know, I think for a person's marriage, for their parenting, I think if you focused on cross country, if you focused on the journey as a marathon. I love watching on YouTube high school cross country because these kids, you can tell the ones who are gifted at it, but you can also tell quickly the ones who've trained well.
Right.
And training by far is because I watched this interview the other night and they said sprinting is about talent and about it's more that person being born with the ability to run fast. Cross country is about training.
Right.
And I think every one of us can be great in our journeys and learn to be wise.
That's what the Bible says.
Yes.
You know, for it's God who's at work in you, both to will and to work for his good purpose. I mean, you know, and because it's almost like Fontaine, so I date myself again, or one of those big milers or something.
Oh, yeah.
Actually getting inside of you as you run. Now, it's me running, so I have to get out on the track. But it's him running in me. And I think we get confused about God's part and our part. He's the one who works in us and through us, but we got to be on the journey.
Well, and I did not realize that you can train a sprinter to run faster and faster, but they will never learn to run farther. But you can train someone to run well farther, and they actually will become faster.
That's right. And that's the journey part.
That's it.
That's the journey part. And you know, where our journey takes us, we talked earlier about our you know,
journeys.
Where we ended up wasn't exactly where we started, how we started. So I think we always have to be available to God and his direction along the journey.
Well, we're gonna do something in our podcast that we're calling Mason Jar Moments. We have our Mason jars here. For those who are listening, you can hear
That
it.
was not totally intended, but
It
because
wasn't.
this
We've
is
been
what
told
we
by our
had.
producer
Yeah,
this is what we're doing.
This is what we had, so we make use of it.
But, and I do like the Coke Zero that's in my mason jar.
Mine's
But
water.
so if we're leaving our folks who are listening with one thing, I think we've picked out a scripture that I think's at the heart of what JourneyWise, our ministry, is about, and that's from Ephesians 4. Would you, in just a moment, read that?
Yes.
Verses 11 on.
Yes. So this is Ephesians 4:11 through 16. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and teachers to equip his people for works of service so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. Then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching and by the cunning and craftiness of people in their deceitful scheming. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow up to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. From him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work.
And I love that because it doesn't say that they're trying to equip you to be perfect. It says they're equipping you for two things: to know Jesus more and for ways of service.
That's right.
And the more you do that, the more you grow up, the more you become mature. So the next time you face that circumstance, you handle it differently. I'm awesome the second time around on 99% of things. First time, okay, but my wife will tell you when I learn a lesson, I normally don't repeat the same bad decision ever again. And I think a lot of people are so afraid of living faithfully to the point they're afraid of making any mistakes. That's going to happen.
Absolutely.
You're going to make mistakes.
I'm sure part of that,
And the goal that I would tell people, Ronnie, would be try to work your way so you're not making the really big mistakes. Work your way into a place, muscle memory is what we golfers call it. The more you read scripture, the more you love Jesus and act like it, and the more you pray, you develop a spiritual muscle memory.
And he rewards that not because we have to earn his love. We have to learn his love.
Learn his love.
And we know practice makes progress.
Yeah, but Jesus makes perfect. All right. Thank you, Ronnie.
Good.
Hey, guys, it's Shane. We're so excited that you're on this journey, and we want to thank you for joining us. If you like what you hear, it would mean a lot to us if you'd subscribe to the podcast and give us a 5-star rating and review. And of course, stay tuned to all that God's doing and working to make all of us JourneyWise.
Thanks for listening to JourneyWise, a JourneyWise Network production.